You know what? I often get asked this question. They say, what's going on with Eddie Long's wife? What is she up to? How did she survive? And what was her response when she heard all those rumors and allegations? You know what I mean. So I did some digging and I got the answer in this video. We're going to dive into Eddie Long, his wife, and what happened after he passed. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe here at this YouTube channel. And I just want to say thank you all for your likes and your shares. I really appreciate them, baby. So let's get it on.
She stood at that funeral in January 2017, front row, composed, dressed in black, holding her children together while the whole world watched. The cameras were on her. The church was packed. The controversy was still swirling. And yet, Vanessa Long didn't flinch. Not publicly, not visibly. She had already survived things that would have broken most people long before that funeral ever happened. See, everybody knows the name Bishop Eddie Long. The megachurch, the scandal, the shrinking frame in those final months. But very few people stopped to ask about the woman who was standing beside him through all of it, from the glory days to the lowest depths, from the accusations to the deathbed. The woman who filed for divorce, then took it back, who said her marriage was irretrievably broken, then stood right back in that pulpit beside him 2 years later, who watched a man she married, a man she called her husband for 27 years, slowly disappear before her eyes, and still chose to speak about him with grace. So today, we're telling Vanessa Long's story, who she really was, what she actually went through, what she said when he died, and where she is today. Because this story is not just about Bishop Eddie Long. It never really was. Stay with me. Before we get to the storm, we have to understand who this woman was before the storm hit. Vanessa Griffin was born in Columbus, Georgia, a quiet, southern upbringing far removed from the spotlight. She wasn't raised in a family dynasty of famous preachers. She didn't come up in front of cameras. By all accounts, she was private by nature, grounded in her faith, and academically serious. She attended Morris Brown College in Atlanta, where she earned a Bachelor of Science degree in office management. After graduating, she went to work for the federal government. Her early career included work with the federal government, and she grew up in Columbus, Georgia, a woman of quiet discipline and practical purpose. Then she met Eddie Long. In 1990, Vanessa Griffin married Bishop Eddie Long, a Columbus, Georgia native herself, in what became his second marriage. At the time, New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Lithonia, Georgia, was already growing under Eddie Long's leadership, but it hadn't yet become the national force it would eventually become. When Vanessa stepped into that marriage, she was stepping into something that would consume her entire adult life. Together they had 3 children, sons Jared and Eric, and daughter Taylor. And she helped raise Edward, Eddie Long's son from his first marriage to Deborah Houston. As First Lady, Vanessa founded and directed the quarterly Heart-to-Heart Women's Ministry Conference, focused on educating, encouraging, equipping, and empowering women in their spiritual journeys, while overseeing related programs such as Women on the Path and the Soul Survivor Cancer Support Group. That last one, the Soul Survivor Cancer Support Group, carries a weight none of them could have fully known at the time. On the church's website in those early years, Vanessa Long was described as the quiet strength in the Long family, and that phrase tells you everything. While Bishop Long was the fiery, charismatic presence behind the pulpit, the one in fitted shirts who moved crowds of 25,000 people, Vanessa was the one holding the infrastructure together, the one behind the scenes, the quiet engine. Under Long's leadership, the church membership grew from 300 to 25,000. That kind of growth doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's a whole world of behind-the-scenes ministry, hospitality, women's leadership, and family stability that has to underpin a church that size, and that was Vanessa's world. For nearly 2 decades, the life looked like a success story. A powerful bishop, a thriving megachurch, a devoted first lady, 4 kids. The Longs were black church royalty in Georgia. Nobody could have predicted what was coming. In September of 2010, the world fell on Vanessa Long's head. a lawsuit was filed against Long by former New Birth members Anthony Flagg, Spencer Legrand, Jamal Paris and Maurice Robinson, alleging the bishop used his influence, trips, gifts and jobs to coerce them into sexual relationships. These weren't strangers. These were young men from the congregation, men who had grown up in that church, men who had trusted Bishop Long with their lives. The allegations were specific: cars, jewelry, travel, private trips, sometimes to other countries. The accusers described a man who had weaponized his spiritual authority in the most personal and damaging way imaginable. And what made it devastating for so many people, beyond just the church members, was that Bishop Long had spent years being one of the loudest voices in the black church against homosexuality. The contradiction was breathtaking. Now, Long denied everything. He did not settle the lawsuits with an admission of guilt. There were no criminal charges filed in the cases because George's age of consent is 16. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported on May 27, 2011, that the lawsuits were settled out of court, terms were undisclosed. He stood before his congregation in September 2010 and told them he was going to vigorously fight the allegations. He said he wasn't stepping down, he was stepping up. But here's the thing. Whatever happened in that courtroom, or out of it, Vanessa Long was living with all of it at home. Think about that for a moment. While the cameras were on Bishop Long, while the commentators were dissecting every press conference, while the congregation was trying to figure out what to believe, Vanessa Long was in a house, with her children, processing what her life had suddenly become. And in December of 2011, after a year of holding it together publicly, she broke. In the divorce filing, Vanessa Long said her marriage to the New Birth senior pastor was irretrievably broken and there was no hope of reconciliation. The couple had been in a state of separation, according to the petition. She also asked the court for temporary and permanent alimony, attorney's fees, and an equitable division of marital property. This was not a quiet filing. This was a woman telling the world, "I cannot do this anymore." But then something strange happened. Something that confused everybody watching. Hours after she issued a statement through New Birth Missionary Baptist Church saying she loved her husband and had changed her mind and wanted to reconcile, her attorney released a statement late that same Friday saying she was proceeding with the divorce. Back and forth. In one day. Filing, then withdrawing, then filing again. Nearly 2 years after Bishop Eddie Long was accused of luring young men from his congregation into sexual relationships, Vanessa Long opened up about her decision to stand by her man. In a video of her August address to the Women's Ministry of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church, a visibly emotional Vanessa Long explained her decision to file for divorce in December 2011. And what she said in that room, speaking to those women, is one of the most raw and honest things a First Lady has ever said publicly about life inside a storm. She said, and I want you to hear this, "I was in the middle of a storm and I got off the ship. As much as I love my husband, my family, my New Birth family, I couldn't take another minute pretending that I was okay." That line right there. I couldn't take another minute pretending that I was okay. She didn't dress it up. She didn't couch it in ministry language. She told those women exactly what it felt like to be First Lady Vanessa Long in December of 2011, and the audience gave her a standing ovation. But she also came back. By September of 2012, she had withdrawn the divorce petition for the final time. Vanessa Long stated that she chose to return to her marriage and to the New Birth family. Her public explanation was rooted in love and faith. She said, "I love my husband, I believe in him and admire his strength and courage. My filing followed years of attacks in the media that frustrated and overwhelmed me. My husband and I have mutually agreed to find healing from these attacks." Now, people had a lot of opinions about that decision. Some called it strength, some called it a tragedy. Some questioned whether any woman in that position could ever truly have a free choice. And all of those conversations are legitimate. But what nobody can take away from Vanessa Long is this. She made a decision under the most intense scrutiny imaginable, with cameras and commentators waiting to judge her either way. And whatever that decision cost her privately, she carried it with dignity. That's what you have to understand about this woman. She was not passive. She was not naive. She chose. Multiple times, under impossible circumstances, she chose. After the reconciliation, things settled into a new, quieter chapter at New Birth. The congregation had thinned significantly. Long's influence dwindled as his congregation began losing members. The church that once drew 25,000 people on a Sunday was not the same institution it had been at its peak. The scandal had taken a toll that couldn't be fully undone. But Bishop Long kept preaching, he kept showing up, and Vanessa kept standing beside him. Then, in 2016, something new started to happen that alarmed everyone who watched. Bishop Eddie Long began losing weight. A lot of weight. Long made his last public appearance 2 weeks before his death. The senior pastor had lost a significant amount of weight, prompting more than a few comments on social media about his thin, gaunt appearance, prognoses about the state of his health, and even rumours of hospice care. The man who had built his public image around physical strength, who wore fitted shirts, who trained, who projected power and authority, was visibly wasting away. And the public was watching in real time. In September 2016, Long released a statement saying he was recovering from a health challenge. The church released a statement that said Long was not in the hospital and quoted him, "I am recovering from a health challenge that I trust God to deliver me from." It is unrelated to the Eating for Life diet consisting of mostly raw vegetables that I am continuing. As part of a holistic approach to good health, he attributed his radically thinner appearance to his adoption of a new raw vegetable diet. "I'm on the medicine that God gave you to feed your immune system to build you up," he said in a video clip posted to social media. The video, intended for supporters, went viral and ended up on YouTube, with the popular church leader insisting he would live to be 100 or older on his new vegan lifestyle. But people who knew illness when they saw it were not fooled. Social media was brutal. The comments were relentless. Because what the congregation and the public were watching, what Vanessa was watching from inside the house, was not a man thriving on vegetables. That was a man fighting something serious, something he had decided to fight privately, with faith and holistic approaches in front of everyone, and yet completely alone. He never publicly disclosed the nature of his illness while he was alive. Long had been absent from several services in the past few months, until the church's Christmas and New Year's Eve services. He delivered his final message to New Birth on New Year's Day 2017. Think about what that looked like. A man who had built one of the largest churches in America, standing before whatever remained of his congregation on the last night of December 2016, delivering a message when most people who could see him probably understood that something was very wrong. During his final sermon on New Year's Eve, Bishop Long told the church that God was already working in their favour and what they had been praying for was already manifested. He preached victory from a body that was losing. And Vanessa was there. 2 weeks later, on January 15th, 2017, Bishop Eddie Long of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church passed away. The cause of death was confirmed as cancer. Long was 63. He was gone. There are moments in public life where the words a person chooses reveal everything about who they really are, what they believe, what they've decided, what they're choosing to carry forward. Vanessa Long's statement after Bishop Eddie Long's death was one of those moments. She could have said very little. She could have released a 2-line acknowledgement and retreated. Given everything she had been through, the scandal, the divorce filing, the public humiliation, the years of questions, nobody would have faulted her for saying nothing beyond "he is at peace." But instead, she called him her celebrated husband. First Lady Elder Vanessa Long shared, "I am confident through my belief in God that my husband is now resting in a better place. Although his transition leaves a void for those of us who loved him dearly, we can celebrate and be happy for him, knowing he's at peace." That was a full statement, a deliberate statement. She didn't just report his death, she declared her faith in where he had gone. She acknowledged the void his passing left in her life. And she used the word celebrate, which in Black church culture has a very specific, sacred meaning. To celebrate a homegoing is to affirm that the person is with God, that the transition, however painful, is not the end of the story. First Lady Elder Vanessa Long was described as Bishop Long's wife of 27 years. 27 years. Through everything. The building of a megachurch, the raising of children, the scandal, the divorce filing, the reconciliation, the slow and devastating illness. 27 years. She did not publicly grieve in the way the world demanded or expected. She did not give interviews about what those final months looked like inside their home. She did not speak about what conversations they had at the end. The family kept the intimate final moments completely private, and that was a choice, a dignified, deliberate choice. The pastor delivered his last sermon on New Year's Eve, and 2 weeks later, he was gone. The gap between that last public appearance and his death was breathtakingly short. Whatever happened in those final weeks, Vanessa Long was present for it, and she has never owed the world a report on what that looked like. What she gave the world was her composed, faith-filled statement, and then she stepped back. Here's the part of this story that doesn't make headlines. And maybe that's exactly the point. After Bishop Eddie Long's death in January of 2017, New Birth Missionary Baptist Church went through a significant transition. Bishop Stephen A. Davis succeeded Eddie Long as the new pastor of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church. After 16 months on the job, Bishop Stephen A. Davis announced his resignation. Later, Pastor Jamal Bryant was selected as the pastor of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church. The church that Eddie and Vanessa Long had built together, the institution that had defined her adult life, her identity, her daily schedule, her ministry work, her community, passed into other hands. And Vanessa Long was not the centerpiece of that transition. She stepped back. And she has largely stayed back. Following Bishop Eddie Long's death in January 2017, she issued a statement expressing her belief in his eternal peace and continued to be regarded as a respected matriarch within the church community. But the active, visible public ministry role she once held, the heart-to-heart conferences, the Women on the Path programs, the front-of-house presence every Sunday. That ended when Eddie Long died. She returned to what she had always been, in some ways before the spotlight found her. A private person, a mother, a woman of faith working out her life without a camera on her. Now some people look at that and read it as retreat, as a woman who was crushed by loss or scandal or both, and who disappeared. But that reading misses something important. Vanessa Long was private before she was a First Lady. She was always the quiet strength, not the loud one. The woman behind the pulpit, not behind the microphone. Her stepping away from public ministry after 2017 may not be defeat. It may simply be a return to her actual nature. Her children have gone in various directions. Edward Long, the eldest, has pursued a path in music and ministry, honouring his father's legacy through creative work. Jared and Eric have maintained their faith roots, appearing at memorial events. Taylor, the only daughter, has kept a particularly low profile, which is consistent with how she has handled public attention since childhood. And Vanessa herself? She has remained in Georgia. She has maintained her quiet connection to the faith community that she spent 30 years serving. She has not written memoirs. She has not launched a platform built on Bishop Long's name. She has not sought television deals or podcast networks or social media followings. What she has done, or at least what we can observe, is choose peace over platform. And in a world where everybody who survives a public tragedy is expected to monetize it, to write the book, to give the exclusive, to be on the documentary, Vanessa Long's silence is itself a kind of statement. It says, I lived this life. It was real. It was mine. I don't owe you a reenactment. Before we close this out, I want to say something directly. Vanessa Long's story is complicated. It does not have a clean moral. It does not have a villain and a hero neatly divided. It has a woman who loved a man, who was betrayed by what that man's public life became, who broke, who chose to come back, who watched him die, and who has chosen silence and dignity as her response to all of it. There are people who look at her and see a woman who stayed too long, who endured too much, who deserved better and didn't fight for it hard enough. Those feelings are valid. There are people who look at her and see an example of grace, of a faith that doesn't bend even when everything around it is collapsing. Those feelings are also valid. What I don't think either camp gets quite right is this. Vanessa Long was not a passive character in her own life. She filed for divorce. She withdrew it. She made a public speech to a room of women about how she had felt. She issued a statement of faith when her husband died that made clear exactly where she stood. These are not the actions of a woman who was simply along for the ride. She made choices, hard ones, imperfect ones, under impossible pressure. And she has chosen, consistently and clearly, not to let the most painful chapters of her life become content for other people's consumption. That, if nothing else, is something worth sitting with. The question of who Vanessa Long really is, beyond the wife of, beyond the first lady of, beyond the woman who stayed, is a question she has never fully answered publicly. And at this point, it seems clear she never intends to. Maybe that's the most dignified ending this story could have. If this video moved you, if it made you think, drop it in the comments. What do you think about Vanessa Long's story? What would you have done? And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button because we go deep on these stories every single week. We'll see you in the next one.